virtual people? Welcome to episode 31 of VCR Redux. We take your favorite franchises out of the analog era and bring them back to 2021. I'm your host, pop culture punk Chris Stiles, joined as always by my co-host with the most, film professor Ian Klink.
How you doing, everybody?
And we have two unbelievable guests on the show tonight.
That is an understatement.
An understatement if there ever was one. First up, he's the author of such incredible pop culture books as Inside Pee-wee's Playhouse, The Making of the Back to the Future Trilogy, and the ultimate visual histories of The Dark Crystal and E.T. He also recently appeared in the Back to the Future episode of Netflix's The Movies That Made Us. Friend of the show and our first guest in our pilot episode, Caseem Gaines is back on the show.
Hello, hello, hello. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for coming back. And it is my extreme honor to say that rounding out this righteous crew is a filmmaker who reshaped pop culture with her work on Freddy's Nightmares, HBO's Dream On, Across the Moon, Cadillac Ranch, Boy Meets World, and the greatest 80s comedy ever made, Just One of the Guys. She's also a world-class educator, having taught filmmaking at the University of Miami, USC, and the Columbia College of Chicago. A friend and hero to everyone who watches VCR Redux. Lisa Gottlieb is on the show.
Good evening. I love hanging out with film nerds. I can't help it. I'm a geek. Once a geek, always a geek. So it's a pleasure to be here.
We're not worthy.
Yes, we're not worthy. Not worthy. It is such an honor. Thank you so much. We are here today to honor the only film that could give us a lead character who dresses like Elvis Costello, looks like the Karate Kid, and always packs an extra pair of gym socks. That's right. The time has come to honor the one, the only, 1985's Just One of the Guys. But before we can figure out why Luann despises toxic waste, we need to talk about how this incredible film came into our lives and what we love about it. We'll start with Lisa and Caseem, but that also goes for you guys watching at home. Hit us up in the live chat with your Just One of the Guys stories. So, Lisa, what is your earliest memory of the project?
I received a script called Ladies' Man from Columbia Pictures.
Oh,
yes.
Ladies' Man, it was called, from Columbia Pictures, from a producer named Andrew Fogelson, and one of the executives at Columbia Pictures. Now, Columbia Pictures had hired this guy who was the president of the agency that I was signed with. And he knew of this project, he pushed it, and his former employees were telling him, you should look at this short film that Lisa made. It's all about kind of switching genders on what had been a very gendered form. You know, like film noir books, specifically kind of Mickey Spillane, but I switched everything. So the tough talking private dick has no dick and is a spiritual clown and solves a mystery of women getting addicted to heroin through their a vaginal spray that perfumes you. It's something that I've never met a woman who uses this product, but I used it in the film and of this short film, and they thought I had the right feel for it. So I pitched some ideas because it was a very good script, excellent script written by a very good writer, Dennis Feldman, who wrote a woman who turns into a reptile and kills people. There were like 4 of them. I'm sorry. Pardon me? Species.
Yeah.
Okay. He went on to do all of them.
That's right. Yeah. And
anyway,
was Jeff Franklin had Jeff Franklin not written on it yet? Later,
no,
okay.
Later. So I invited a friend of mine who we were very good at writing comedy together. And I said, we have to make a comedy here, but it has to have meaning. You know, they want a teenage Tootsie in a high school. That's what the studio told me. And I said, yeah, we can do that. And if you look at Tootsie, it's actually, when you think about the side characters, you know, Bill Murray and how they treated this idea that, you know, he's falling in love with this woman. She would never talk to him. as a man, he's not in her league. So we had that idea. We built it up a little bit more, and we also did some fairly surreal, funny. I like challenging comedy. I just had that. I had that read Mad Magazine that flowed right into National Lampoon, that flowed into Saturday Night Live, and I just thought, this level of irreverence is what I love. So I invited my friend Mitch Giannunzio in, and we developed another draft, and then we wrote 2 more drafts, handed it in. They liked it. They gave us more notes, but they greenlit us. So we had the money to set up casting, and we went location scouting in Phoenix and Scottsdale, Arizona, which we called Kleenex and Snotsdale. There were a lot of empty high schools there. You know, nobody grows, they don't have babies and stick around in Phoenix and Scottsdale. So we had 3 empty high schools to play with, to dress, 2 that could be the 2 different high schools. And then we lived in a DoubleTree Inn right across the street, so we could walk to work. We used sets.
Nice.
And that's where we staged, and we had an editing room and a casting studio, and I had a big rehearsal room. So it was really good. We wrote these 3 drafts, just to circle back to the original question of the development of the script. And then while we were casting, they were friends. They said, we have a friend like you, he's got this kind of, I said, he works blue. And they said, yes, he works a little blue. Because these are teenagers and their parents are gone for a few weeks. They can do and say anything they want. And parents don't even exist at this age, you know? So we were busy getting to make the film, and Jeff came in and we met and spoke, and he wanted to write some, he was very inspired by the Billy character, the younger brother, Buddy. Billy Jane, but Buddy. And he said, I think we can go farther with him. I think this whole idea about what guys that age are obsessed with and stuff, I mean, you lay it out here, but I think I can run wild with him. And so he was with us for a few weeks. You know, he wrote a lot of good jokes. He came to the set with us, but then almost immediately left. And I said, where were you going? He goes, I'm going to get really rich. I said, okay, how do you do that? And he said, well, you know, I've been writing all this sitcom stuff for years, but I wanted my own sitcom, and I pitched my own, and I've got it. So I own the show. If it's a hit, I'll be rich. If not, you'll see me again. I'll be back here. So, you know, we never came back, but I'm forever grateful to him for the ball scratching scene. One of the finest cinematic moments of my life. And, you know, I knew about this. I've been married twice, 2 men. So I understand that this occurs.
It does.
Quite a lot of regularity. So when he first pitched this to me, I said, you go. There's no boundaries on that. You go. I mean, my first husband used to describe to me the pleasures of it. I said, that's so interesting. You have fun. I got something to do. So I know, and I knew it would be hilarious. And so that's the story of the script, because I was rewriting a lot of stuff every day in my trailer, just because as you get to know these actors' voices, and I dragged everyone to Arizona for a full week of all-day rehearsals. I got everybody in there who already knew each other. And so Clayton felt very left out. I said, well, you're supposed to feel that way. You're that guy. So He's still hurt. But he's a doll, and I loved the actors. I did a lot of improvisation once they really understood the script. We did a couple of table readings of it. Then we went through and we rehearsed everything we could. And I spent a lot of time just with Clayton working on who this guy was. And I brought all my James Brown records to the set. And so he had all that stuff at his fingertips. So that's really what happened. You never stop writing it. You're still writing it when you're in the editing room, where I added lines of dialogue to drop into scenes, and just got a lot of other stuff into the film that I'd always wanted there. And I was lucky because they recognized, well, my title was I Was a Teenage Boy. And I wanted to play it like a confessional, you know, like those old teen magazine confession stories of going too far on a date and then your reputation was over. Anyway, it's fun to build it step by step, and it's fun when everybody comes with you. And I gave them a lot of homework. They had to read books. There were these two books, one called He and one called She, written by, his name was Robert Johnson. He was a poet and a philosopher. I developed these books, and I thought they were really on the money. And I thought, to have a deeper level where we're really talking about gender in a real way, and also just about the culture of teenagers who don't care what their parents think. They've got peer group is everything. Figuring out how to maneuver through the world of sex and how to get laid, that's a big part of it. What you're wearing is a big part of it. We spent a lot of time dressing these people. So
and it's an iconic fashion film in many, many ways. I was just listening to the commentary track you guys did for the Blu-ray earlier, and, you know, hearing that to a lot of, you know, trans people, the film is like kind of like a guiding light or something that inspired them or kind of gave them sort of a roadmap on like how to, you know, start dress, or, you know, just ideas and stuff like that. But it really has been like a hero film to that community, which I think is amazing.
I was shocked when I learned that, because we really thought we were making a cute little heterosexual film, and we didn't think anything about it. But I mean, I grew up in the middle of New York City, and I was a theater geek. It's like I live immersed in a gay culture, in a, you know, fluid culture all around me, because I teach college, and, you know, pronouns, I'm fine with it. I'll call you whatever you want to be called. You know, I love your writing. You could be anything you want to be. But we had just a brilliant wardrobe designer named George Little, who was the ultimate. He looked the way I wanted Terry to look as a guy, but he was more masculine, but he had this kind of hairdo with a pompadour, blonde hair. He wore great clothes every day. We decided when we were having all these discussions about, you know, what Terry as a boy would look like, we all said, it's George. We just want George. We wanted to wear all of George's clothes. And his first idea was he would give Sherilyn Fenn's character more of a look where she's kind of fluid. And I said, no. She is Buddy, but in the female body. She really wants to get busy. That's not who she is. But when Terry turns into a boy, the clothes she's going to reach for are going to be very hip, and they're going to be stylish, but also masculine, because she is a great shopper. So we decided all this stuff about who they were, and that's how we dressed them. But George Little has so much to do with these fabulous clothes. He just, I love clothes. I mean, I grew up with following my mother through Bloomingdale's. And if she could have rented a little apartment next to the shoe department on the 4th floor, we would have lived there on the weekends. So, you know, I loved playing around with wardrobe with this. And I went home with so many outfits that were draped off the shoulder. One day I looked and I have like 20 things here that are off the shoulder, because that was a look for her.
Yeah.
But again, another thing that just kind of, you remember about the film and you love about it. So the chat, we do have a live chat, and I want to get to that in a sec here because it is going wild today. No surprise. But I also wanted to give Caseem and Ian a chance to talk about how this film came into their lives real quick. Any first memories? We talking VHS cable, theaters, Laserdisc. How did this film first strike you guys?
Well, I'm going to say first and foremost, Lisa, I feel like I want you to be like my best friend forever. Like when you come to New York, please have Chris like give you my number. Like I want to do lunch. Like I can listen to you share these stories forever. Like this is so
likewise.
You don't even know. This is it's touching me in a way that's hard to articulate. But so my first interaction with the movie was probably through a TV guide. Because, and I'm going to admit, this is kind of like a little bit of like a buddy moment for myself here, but there was a point in time in my early adolescence where I would just look through the TV guide for anything that had a parental warning that there was nudity. And so, sorry, Mom, if you're listening, sorry to say that, but so that was, and I had a VCR and I was able to record things. And so it didn't matter what time of day or night, I could just, pop in a tape. And when I had some time, I could watch. And just one of the guys had a nice warning that said I shouldn't have been watching it, but I was going to watch it. So it's funny because certainly at the time that this movie was brought to my attention, I probably like at the first sight of boobs would have like turned off the movie, but Lisa made me wait until the end of the movie, so I watched the whole movie and I was like, this thing is really good. And like the buddy character especially was so like just like the horniest little like kid, like thought everything that I thought, except like I would never ever dare to say it. I would never have dared to say it. But like he said it so freely that I was like, this is really amazing. This is like, empowering, like his
playing
room
himself.
with all, yeah, it was crazy. His room with all like the centerfolds. I was like, whose room is this? That was like a real sort of like awakening for me, just that like you can embrace your full horny self.
He was the horniest 14-year-old I'd ever met.
Me too.
Everybody had to smack him off.
Oh, you're saying in real life.
But
For real.
Billy delivers those centerfold quotes with such pathos.
He
know
does.
what I mean? Like, Kim reads Vonnegut in her bubble bath. Luann despises toxic waste. And the only reason Wanda does her homework buck naked is because that library is hot. Like, it's such sincerity. It's, oh my God.
It's funny because I feel like in late elementary school, I mean, even elementary school, middle school, like I feel like that was reality, like that wasn't a cat. Now, when I go back and watch it as an adult, I'm like, man, that kid's like really horny. But at the time when I was a kid, I was like, that kid's just a kid, like it was just totally normal to me. So
he thinks he has 2 weeks to get laid and then he'll never get laid again. He thinks while his parents are gone, this is his shot. And if he fails, it's all over. It's a very irrational belief, but that's how we worked on the character.
But in high school, that's the way it feels though, isn't it? It's like you're going to this party, like it's this party or never. Like it feels that way. So I understood.
My parents would go
irrational now. I was there for the ride. Totally.
When he's being blocked by Kaveen and he's just like, she joined a cult. I'm sorry. Get out.
Terry, back from the cult.
You're the cult.
So that's I'm going to keep it short, but that is my, and the other, actually, I want to say one more thing, which is I feel like so much of my sense of, I don't know if I'd say humor, but like my way of like diffusing situations really comes from the way like Rick addresses like the Greg in the cafeteria. Like I feel like that was me in school. Like I would kind of go at people, but just like try and make them feel small. And that was kind of my superpower. And I don't know if that always existed or if like some of that like was seeped in through
Yes.
this is through just one of the guys, but like
That's
through
what we
even
call
now,
1980s DNA right there.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
incredible.
but that
100%.
scene to me is so brilliantly written, and I feel like it's I connect so much with just like, getting the whole crowd to turn on this bully is great. So that's it. I'm gonna shut up now and let Ian do
Well,
it.
I'm happy to be your best friend because we have something in common. I too worship Pee Wee Herman.
Ah,
When I first moved to LA in 1980, I joined the Groundlings because
Oh,
there was a writer's strike and a SAG strike. The actors and the writers were on strike. I arrive, I've got an agent, I've got spec scripts, I just won the Student Academy Award. The world is at my feet, only nobody's working. So I had to figure out something to do with myself. I did get together with a friend and we wrote a few scripts together, and we managed to sell those once things were over. But, there was 6 months, nothing going on. So I joined the Groundlings, and I worked in the weekday shows, and then I'd be there on the weekend watching Paul Rubens, who was a genius, John Paragon, a lot of those.
Yes.
Yeah, they were great.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get you a book. I'm gonna send you a book out, so you got it.
Yeah, it's an incredible book.
Contact info from Chris. Pardon me?
Yes, it's a great book. That's, I think the first thing of yours that I read, I think, was Inside Pee-wee's Play. It might have been The Back to the Future, but definitely those were the first two. They're both, Caseem's an incredible author. So I'm just fanboying so ridiculously right now. Before we go to the chat, which again, I apologize for not getting to it yet.
Oh yeah.
I will greet everyone in the chat momentarily, but I do want to also give Ian, what was your first time watching Just One of the Guys? We talking cable, USA?
So
HBO?
as always, it's thank God for Gilbert Gottfried and
USA Up All Night.
USA Up All Night, because that's my first experience of Just One of the Guys. But of course, as Caseem was talking about, the infamous scene at the very end. Of course, what I got was this zoomed in, of Joy, her face, and but what was interesting is, at the age, that I was,
they cut it for TV.
They cut it for TV,
They
yeah. So it was
cropped the shot,
so where she's, here, for TV, it's like here,
Yeah.
and but at the same time too, it still worked. Like I still got it, and it was almost more of an innocent approach to the whole idea, But what's also funny though, years later, I worked at a movie gallery, during my college years. And, congratulations, Lisa. You along with Fast Times at Ridgemont High were one of the tapes that kept having to get recycled because people would pause it, rewind it, pause it, and it would break.
I knew I would be giving a whole generation of young men their first view. And of course, when the arguments about whether we should show the boobs or not, because I was very pro boob. I thought we really needed to see what he was seeing at that moment, that it would surprise him to that level, that he would be in so much shock. That they all believed she was a guy when she looked like a guy. I mean, that was the biggest problem to solve. And I have a great VCR story that relates to all of this for you when we get ready, because, with video stores, you always know you can recognize a film nerd when they recognize the name of a person who directed a movie like, a dozen years before that, 20 years before that, and recognize it and say something like, "So do fish eat pizza?" And I would say, "Oh, honey, you got to get out more." But still, I loved it. I loved it. And every time I came in, he remembered and would ask me these kinds of questions, which obviously I love to answer.
Oh man, so good.
Yeah, well, it's also funny too, because then years later, I see it on HBO, and I have. Yeah, and I have, I have the recollection without it, and then all of a sudden you see it like, it's like going from, going from flat to widescreen. All of a sudden, like, oh, okay,
Hello.
that's a different approach to the story. But yeah, that was the first one. It was USA Up All Night. That would be one that they would play. It'd be like Cave Girl, followed by Porky's I the next day, and then it's just one of the guys. That would be like a Friday night lineup for USA Up All Night.
It is
We
one
were
of
in
the
the first rotation that HBO did when they started showing movies, and it was on all the time. And when Comedy Central started and had minimal programming, just one of the guys was on every 10 minutes. I mean, my residual checks were lovely during that. Thank you, Comedy Central. Thank you, HBO.
That's when Comedy Central, they should be thanking you, because that is when they were at their peak. Now Comedy Central is, it's too major now. It's like, it was so cool and underground back then.
Listen, I think I need a thanks because I watched it so many times on HBO for sure. Believe me.
Oh yeah, Comedy Central.
I'll take some thanks too.
It's one of those movies that even though
4 or 5 times, I've been in a hotel in another country or in New York or somewhere else, and I turn on the TV just to have some company while I'm unpacking or getting ready for something, and I'd say, "Oh, look at that. That looks familiar." And then I'd say, it's just one of the guys. I had this feeling at a certain point that somewhere in the world at any given time, it's on a cable or satellite or dish or some kind of thing, because it happened at least 6 times. It happened in New Orleans, New York. It happened in Paris. Yeah.
It's still the reason why I keep DirecTV to this day, so I can randomly come in at different points in the movie, like my first time watching, which I will get to in a sec. I do want to touch on the chat real quick. A lot of folks in there saying hi. Alex Bonafonte, Anthony Ramirez, Mike and Angie Saunders, all Mashup Geniuses, and Jay Ledford as well. Hello to everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Sean Gold comes in with a funny quote. "Sorry I'm late. I had to change into something more formal," which is cute. I love it. Also quoting, "She's really naked because that library is so hot." Our buddy and usual co-host says, "Loving that Velvet Elvis." That's Mickey Torres. And another person who wants to be your best friend, gorgeous, Lisa, is our friend Melanie. Melanie Mullen, who's in the chat, just says, "Lisa Gottlieb." Hell yeah. Lisa is produced scores and scores of special edition DVDs and Blu-rays, and she's producing the Angela the Sleepaway Camp documentary. And for those at home, who know how I got in touch with Lisa, a long time before coronavirus started, I had contacted Lisa about making a documentary on Just One of the Guys that Melanie was going to produce. So she's very mad at me that she's not on this episode, but I wanted to send some extra special love to Melanie Mullen. Thank you for joining the chat.
Well, thank you, Melanie, and I'm happy to be your best friend too. And let's get that sequel made, or let's get the documentary made, because it's a really interesting story. Because after a long period of time, we all got back together, and it was like no time had passed. And they're all such interesting people, and they've done such interesting things. They're fascinating. If I'd had more time, more notice before we did this, it was sort of coming up quickly, I would have gotten a couple of them to zoom in. If you Joyce is up for anything, so is Tony Hudson. And Ari Gross will do anything I tell him to do.
I love all of them so much.
Super nice to Clayton. And he joins in too.
We're gonna have to do a part 2, Chris. We're gonna have to do a part 2.
Absolutely. We're gonna have to do a part 3. Yeah,
that's it. Yeah.
Let's just turn it into another trilogy.
Eric Gross. Oh my God.
It'd be great.
One of the best parts of the movies. Can I just say that? Those two guys as the nerds.
They had dropped most of that because originally Dennis wrote them as Trekkies. And I was looking for a lot of stuff that Dennis designed to leave it in, because his dad was one of the producers. So I didn't want to make it seem like I was obliterating his vision. But I did like them as Trekkies. But as soon as we found out we didn't have permission to make them Trekkies, that's when because I'd worked in theater with Ari Gross and Robert Fieldsteel, who played Willie and Phil, and they came up to the office and we kicked around ideas, and they said, well, we've been talking behind your back, and we thought maybe it would be cool if we were actual teenage aliens who are doing a study about teenagers. And I said, well, let's rock and roll with that. Let's play with some scenes. And basically they improv their whole thing. And I was just typing, just to keep up with them. And we did that 3 or 4 times, and we had some of the funniest scenes in the film. So
okay, we're gonna have to bring Ari on to do House.
Yes.
I
Again,
I want a sequel to the House movies with him
and to any cast members who end up watching this video after the fact, absolute love and respect to all of you for making an absolute classic. And as said in the chat by Anthony Ramirez, seriously, one of my favorite movies of all time, perfectly cast, so original, and just hit that right mix of comedy and having a compelling story. Also in the chat, Mickey Torres, my love for this movie is endless. Just again, so much love and so many happy people in the chat. Nice to see I'm not the only. Oh yeah, Melody Mullen and Mickey they're both mad they're not in this episode. Everyone wanted to be on this show with you, Lisa.
We can do it again. I love this stuff.
Yes.
I do. I really love it. I think Zoom is great.
And I'll just do one more in the chat.
Where are you guys? So where are you, Chris?
So I'm in New Jersey. I've been here for a while. And again, you want to do more conventions, please come to New Jersey HorrorCon sometime. We've had Toni Hudson a couple of times. She's a doll. She's great. We almost had Joyce one time, but I think she had to film something. And at the last minute it became unavailable. But, we'd love to have you guys come up to the show. Get to do this on stage and
I'd love
in
to
front of people.
Joyce too. I'd love to convince Joyce too.
Oh, I would be so happy, and get Clayton as well. Might as well get the whole gang together.
Why not?
Yeah, right.
I'm in the Delaware, PA area, kind of that little corner there. Yeah. So I teach in Delaware. Yeah.
Oh, really? Well, what school are you at?
It's at Middletown. It's MOT Charter High School. So I'm a high school. So it's actually interesting to teach film to high school students who, you can't show a movie like Just One of the Guys because of the editing and what I have to do.
Show them the USA Up All Night version.
But that's what I've asked for years. I thought all of these studios are sitting on goldmine. If I had an edited TV version of Just One of the Guys, I could show it to the class. And I actually think, it was actually going to be part of one of my, of the pitch when I get in there of how relevant this movie is today with some of the identifying issues that we're running into it in high school and all this kind of stuff. So I'm telling you, studios are sitting on a gold mine. They don't know it.
Yes.
Send those out to teachers.
They're very distracted. And a lot of the stuff they acquired when they bought Columbia, it's in storage, but they have put out a lot of versions for a lot of buyers. They have to do some changes in it to fix what they need. And they have to get approval. And they have to have consultation with the directors. And I'm a director. So I felt my job was to save the jokes because they kept cutting out all the punchlines because the punchlines were blue, because they were sexy. And I found a way to get them to let the punchline play, let the humor play, and just fuzz things that are in the background. So they did a version where the pictures on Buddy's wall were fuzzed, but you heard the whole thing was there. They had cut out the ball scratching scene, and which
Criminal.
I think is very key. And I said to the editor on one of our consultation calls, and I didn't give them a hard time. It was very nice because I wanted them to always invite me back so that they wouldn't be releasing a version of my film that nobody would understand. They don't think about it. They just chop, chop, chop. And they screened a version for it for the board at NBC Universal because they were the buyer of that. And they said, what the fuck? Where's the ball scratching scene? Tell this to us and cut out the fucking ball scratching scene. And I get a call from the editor with the post-production supervisor on the other line from Sony in a panic. And they said, what do we do? And I said, put it back in. Clearly, they want it back in. Let's look at it, see if there's anything that you particularly offends you. And then they said very defensively, oh, no, nothing offends us. We love it. We're worried when we give it to these corporate types to show on TV, particularly prime time. And I said, well, are we cutting it for prime time? And they said, absolutely. So this is the revelation. Ball scratching can work in prime time. As far as Sony Pictures is concerned, there's great hope in that, I think, for filmmaking.
There's also irony in the fact that the ball scratching scene saved the movie about a woman dressing up like so fascinating.
Gotta go with it,
Although I've never gone left to right. I might be the only one in the room to admit this, but I've never done that move.
You've never done the shift?
I've never done the shift.
It's your basic shift. No? You gotta learn the basics.
Yeah.
So I will say one last thing in the chat, because we are past the half hour. We should be into sequels by now. But one last thing in the chat again. Melanie Mullen says she only first discovered the film 5 or so years ago and loved it so much she immediately watched it again, which is about as good of an endorsement as you can give a film. But anyway, and also my first time, I was on. Lisa knows this story, but I was on vacation. And the first day there, we had cable at this hotel, and sort of acclimate myself. My mom sat down and watched this movie with me because we thought at first that was Ralph Macchio, VHS kind of grainy quality. Is that Macchio? I think I was obsessed with Karate Kid, and then we're like, oh no, it's not. Oh, what is this? Oh,
and then you saw Billy Zabka, and you were really confused.
I was really confused for a minute there, and I'm sure that there are executives at Columbia that are like, that worked exactly the way we wanted this to work. We got him hooked in on this, Karate Kid thing. But yeah, it's and then I got sunburned and ended up indoors the entire week watching the movie once or twice a day, sometimes even, and loving it more with each watch. But at any rate, so this is incumbent upon all of us and all of you watching at home to hit us with some pitches here. We all want to see just a little more of the guys. We want to see just one of the guys too, Guy Harder. So who's got the hot take and who wants to dive in first?
I'm nervous.
And it's got very quiet.
You need to go first.
Everyone's scared. Everyone's honored because you're here, Lisa. So no one wants to say the first silly, dumb pitch.
I could do the first one because we did kick this around, the cast and I, a few times.
Oh, well, please do. Yes.
I need to hear this. Yeah.
Yeah. This is what we're all here for. So
we're all just little kids that just
I know. Look at me. I'm
well, we always had this basic idea. Tony had called me once and said, I've got it. It's genius. And I said, well, what is it? He said, well, we're coming up on a 30-year anniversary. Why don't we just start with the idea of a 30-year reunion, high school reunion? And we get it, and we find a way to have to cross-dress to save something. And I said, well, it's a good starting point. Let's work on it. Now, Joyce had another idea, which is that instead of going the reunion thing, which you'd always have to pitch as one option, was to do something a little bit more unique. Terry and Clay and Rick get married and they have kids and then they get divorced. And we jump to, we start, and that's backstory, but there's a summer camp event. And Rick is kind of a deadbeat dad, and his daughter wants to bond with him. And there's a thing at her summer sleepaway camp, which is a dad and daughter weekend. And he promises he's going to come, and Joyce is yelling at him, Terry yelling at him, saying, you're not going to show up. You're such a deadbeat dad. And his daughter is going to say, you're really going to disappoint me and break my heart, right? But they go together to the camp. And the daughter has to dress up like a guy. We have worked out a very convoluted plot. I think we'd have to simplify it. She's got to dress like a guy in order to get this other guy. And so she's calling home to get advice from her mom, and she's trying to get her dad to talk about it. And he doesn't like to talk about it, that he was sort of dancing with and rolling around the floor with somebody he thought was a guy. And then it ended up as a girl, married her, had kids with her, couldn't stick around, right? For whatever reason. But he rises to the occasion. She shows up to get her daughter out of trouble. Now, at that point, Joyce wanted Rick's character to have to get dressed in drag, but we couldn't figure it out yet. We didn't give him a reason. But I'm just saying that, with a good pitch, you just kind of need a framework.
Yep.
And a few ideas you can throw out. So clearly, these two ideas that me and the cast have been kicking around for 30 freaking years, 35 years at this point, I think. You'd have to get the original studio interested, which is, a challenge, but you never know. One day they love you, one day they hate you, and the next day they love you again. And then there you are, you get a green light on your movie. It's not like anybody makes any sense in Hollywood. It just, things happen.
We'll all
Lisa,
recommendation. We'll
yeah.
vouch.
Yes. I've got a thing that would work. When I was in camp as a kid, we actually did this. Some for like a confidence issue, for confidence booster and stuff. We had a camp counselor who actually dressed up like a woman. It was because he wanted people to perform. We were doing Grease, and all of a sudden he got out there. He's like, you know what? Let's rock this out. He grabbed a dress, he grabbed makeup, he did all this stuff. If somehow he did that to get his daughter to perform, and you get this great performance scene, that's how he can dress up.
Because we always do shows at camp. I remember all the shows.
Yeah. That'd be perfect. He could dress up, and you got to do an 80s song that would totally, I don't even know what you could do. I think I just keep thinking time, from Dirty Dancing. I had the time of my life. But reverse it. And now you got Joyce comes in, or Terry comes in dressed up, as the baby's character. And, and he's Jennifer Grey. That could be an awesome
And maybe Clayton, to get back together with her, dresses as a girl to let Terry know that it's all okay. He worked it out. Well, see, the thing is, Joyce and her husband have a camp. They own a camp up in the Sierras in this beautiful spot. And so far, so good. It hasn't burned down. California, it's every inch of it will catch fire in our lifetimes, just not at the same time. So anyway, that was part of the basis of it. She said oh, well, you'll have to come up and Jim and I will show you around. We'll do a location scout. So we have our location for the camp one. Since you brought up the show, now you're re-inspiring me to
that's what this show's about.
Yes. Well, there are a lot of oh, I'm sorry. There's a lot of pitches in the chat. So I do want to get to some of those, of course. And apologies if I don't get to all of them, because the chat is just going wild today. I see Alex Bonafonte says, I put a pitch above. I'm not sure if I find yours, Alex, so I apologize. But I do see one that says just two of the guys pretends to be two different dudes for two motives. That's an interesting double take on it, almost like a double.
Wasn't there an Antonio Banderas movie like that, though? It was Too Much or Too Something. I remember that from the 90s.
There's something that kind of popped in my head, but again, I'll get to that in a sec. There's also some talk of doing it with Buddy's kids, and I believe that's from my buddy screenwriter Sean Gold. Again, another amazingly talented person in the chat who would probably love to be on this episode.
That man would have 17 kids out there.
And just a side note, our buddy
he has a lot of kids. He has a band. He's got a beautiful wife, a lot of kids, and he directs video clips. He directs advertising. He's been very successful
And he
doing
was,
little jobs like that. He's a great guy.
and he was briefly, didn't he have like a big Levi's deal in the early 90s? Something like the button fly jeans or something. I always try and find this, but certain things that you just hang on to from pop culture memories. Maybe I'm the only one here. It's Mandela effect or something.
I don't
But
remember, but you know, he and his brother both were child actors their whole lives. Billy Jacoby and Scott Jacoby were the names they used then, but their real name was Jane. So I'm not sure why.
Right.
I think he was called Billy Jacoby in the credits of our film. So he became an adult, changed his name. So this is his new identity. This is the stuff he does, but he does have a large number of children. He's told I have a lot of children. So there's a lot of children in my house. So
he wasn't acting in the movie at all, is what you're saying. He just,
well, I guess he was trying to figure out how he would build his dynasty.
Two more things I'll say.
Once he managed to get laid the first time.
Yeah, it was like the dam broke, and then it was just he was just swimming in women for the rest of his life. Again, just two more things I'll touch on the chat. One, Dustin Nino, our good buddy from Retro Fiend Radio, says Lisa is the coolest guest in the world. Much agreed there. Also, a sequel pitch from Melanie Mullen. Terry and Rick are married, but their marriage is struggling because he always wants Terry to dress up as a guy.
Sean, I like that.
I like this one
Melanie, you just went drama. You just went like the Lifetime movie approach of this. Yes. Yes.
And a little edgy, a little sexy. I like it.
Sean Gold, again, a genius screenwriter, says his pitch is Terry gets abducted by a cult. Now it is up to Buddy to team up with Kevin, his rival, to save the day. That would be the buddy cop movie of my dreams.
It's so
Take
silly.
my money.
But silly really works with conventions like this. I mean, I like this whole breaking the fourth wall and stuff, and I could imagine that they're getting together. It's the cast getting together for a 30th reunion. The cast, the filmmakers, call Jeff and see if he wants to come down off his hill and join with us. At any rate, and the idea, oops, I'm dropping things, with the idea that, they walk through some kind of time portal and they're back in the 80s in these high schools, and they have to figure out how to do something. I mean, I don't know the big issue of what they want, but I like that idea that they then have to be those characters. Friends of mine, we were talking about the Truman Show the other day, and I was reminded how great that was, how you really suspended all this disbelief, but there's no way you would really believe that's going on. And this is something that I think we cozied up to, this idea. Everybody said, well, Joyce is a very sexy woman. How are you going to turn her into a guy? I said, well, you'll see. She'll believe she's a guy. Everybody else will believe she's a guy. No one will wink. And, we'll do it. We'll pull it off. But you can only hope, you could be on a set where you crack up the crew every day, many times, and then you show it to an audience and it's not funny at all. But we were lucky. We previewed well. We did really well. But I like that idea of going surreal with stuff like this. I just think the original audience for the film, when you guys all saw it for the first time, well, now you're in a very different space. Mm-hmm. And to look at it in that kind of postmodern way, to take that meta, like fourth wall, get rid of it, and then create a fantasy around that. But with the similar sets, all the pastel colors that decorated the sets, all the things, we could recreate that look really well, because there's still nobody in those high schools in Phoenix and Scottsdale. There are 3 empty high schools there.
But can you find the biggest poster possible of Born in the USA that I've ever seen in my life? Can you find that? Because that thing is half the size of that room.
Well, I spent a lot of time with Joyce figuring out what would be on her walls with the art department. We got together, we had a few meals together, said what, and of course we also had an Elvis Costello poster, we had a Karate Kid poster. We figured she was doing what most kids at that time were doing. I mean, she wasn't high school age. I think Sherilyn and Billy were the only kids who would make it in a high school. But when we were having our rehearsal week, I knew I wanted to spend at least one day, maybe two, at Tempe High School, which is just a few minutes away. So I made this big deal of bringing them down there and registering them and saying their materials are coming. And they were standing there and she said, we're not going to pull this off. And then we walked out into the open cafeteria area and we were just knocked on our asses. Those teenage kids in high school looked way older than we did. They were lots of makeup, lots of fashion. A lot of girls dressing as Madonna, which we did a little bit with Sherilyn's character. And anyway, it's interesting because we could see that we could do this, but we spent the day with them and they made some friends and tried to get conversations going. And then we sat in some classes and then I had to go back. And I said, I'm going to send a car in an hour and a half. And they said, no, please get us out of here. And I said, no, I'm going to send a car in an hour and a half. You'll meet them right here. Go to class. You're doing class. Get your asses into class. And they loved it. When we went back to actual rehearsal, they said, I can't believe you made us do that, but it really worked. I mean, the idea of cracking the code to be a high school student, it happened because they were there and they talked to everybody and they spent enough time and then they thought, get us out of here. And then for an hour and a half, they had fun, probably because I wasn't, breathing onto their shoulders.
I think that's how Cameron, Crowe wrote Fast Times. I think he enrolled himself in high school and pretended to be a teenager while he was writing it.
Yeah.
So there's definitely something to that. Again, there's a couple more pitches in the chat. There's a lot of requests for a Cobra Kai crossover, which I wholeheartedly endorse. In fact, I think I probably even sent you a mashup I made of just one of the Kais, which I still would pay to see. But as also, again, Melanie Mullen has sequel idea number 2, going off the camp idea. Terry and Rick own a girls' enrichment camp after what Terry experienced back in high school. A boy dresses as a girl to get access to their great program. Okay. Yeah, I'm down. I love summer camp movies too, so I'm down for all of that. One thing I will say that keeps popping in my mind though, is to maybe take an element of it and do it because it's 2021 and because times have changed. Like what if, either Buddy or Terry and Rick or one of them had a kid who was actually trans, and then maybe say the kid was interviewed for a school newspaper or something and sort of accidentally said, oh, like my mom was trans, my mom's a trans here, from back in the 80s, and that sort of, so then Joyce has to pretend that she's still kind of, trans, whatever. So you kind of have the old comedy and the fun, the old guard there, but then you also have the new guard and the serious stuff and maybe some comedy and drama on both ends, of course.
Well, I think it's about time these trans kids got their own high school comedy, given that all these right-wing people, I mean, these are the most vulnerable human beings in our world right now. Especially trans women of color, they get thrown in men's prison for stupid, nothing crimes that nobody would be thrown into prison for, where they're not protected and where they get killed. It's like, it's okay to kill these people. And you got all these young children and they're in school and they want to play sports and they want to learn, about the world, but they're also formulating their own characters. And to tell them, well, you can't be on the team because you're a fraud and you can't use the bathroom in school and you have weird pronouns, you're weird. And it's the thing that bullies do. They choose the most powerless people and attack them. I would love to play with that idea. I love the film that I'm trying to remember his name. He did on an iPhone. He made the iPhone.
Oh, Tangerine.
Tangerine. Yeah.
Tangerine. I loved it.
Yeah.
And those characters were great, and they were absolutely who they were. And I just think that people pick something that is no threat to them to threaten. And it's pathetic and it's weak. But to do this to children, it's shameful. To do this to people who are just, if there's any crime committed, it's a survival crime or a crime of not having any money and having to, sleep somewhere that you wouldn't normally have to sleep. I think we're the richest country that ever existed in the history of the world. I think we can do better on these things. I don't think anybody should have to sleep on the street. Everyone should have a home. They could do it. They did it during COVID in New York. And as soon as they thought, oh, well, it's all over, it wasn't over. We had more surges to come. They threw all the homeless people out that they had homed. And I think, okay, they couldn't leave them there to not be on the street. Over half of them are schizophrenics. They're ill. Over half of them are addicted to drugs. They're ill. Put them in a room, give them a TV, their own bathroom, their own bed. Understand that everybody deserves human dignity, and you will not have as big a drug problem, and you will not have as big a problem because the people will take their medication and they'll stay home when it's too hot or too cold out and watch TV. That's what they will do.
And they'll watch just one of the guys.
They'll
that's what they'll do. The world will be a better place.
Somewhere.
You are becoming the world's best friend. I just have to say, Lisa, I love all this.
It's funny,
that was
Lisa.
my little political tirade. I had to get it out of the way.
I love it. I'm here for it. 100%.
I'll be honest, I love the one thing. I was watching the movie again last night, and and I didn't remember this from years ago, but watching it again, the one scene I love that you put in there is when she is Terry and the article still doesn't get accepted. I thought that was so interesting because obviously the traditional sense would be like, oh yeah, that's exactly the whole point. Yeah. Oh, this is a great article. Yeah, of course. No, you got to put the passion into it. And I was like, man, that was actually a smart script move to kind of reverse that, what you thought was going to happen. And it kind of, like you were just kind of talking about, it's showing the difficulty it can be on both sides of the aisle.
It creates a great arc for Terry too, because she has an arc as a writer and just and an arc, a love story like everyone has in a movie. But she grows as a person and as a writer.
Working at the paper, she's got the summer job at the paper. She managed to get there when she really cared about what she was writing about and could put herself into it.
Oh, you know what, too? You could have Lee McCloskey as a great villain in this. Maybe he became some sort of like crappy, evil politician or something, and he's trying to discredit. She cheated on that Sun Tribune contest. She submitted 2 entries. No one else was allowed to make 2 submissions. This and that. Started trying to throw shade all over, the family and everything. That could be very, very interesting.
Teaching at Juilliard. And the thing about Lee is we had cast somebody else in it. The studio decided they didn't like him. We taped some scenes we were doing. Which had to do with the fact that this head of the studio developed a big crush on Joyce. So suddenly he was very intrigued by any man who was going to touch her or to kiss her or anything. He liked Clayton. He thought, this guy's okay. He didn't like a couple of other actors that I also liked, but I loved Clayton. And he did a great test. He was wonderful, and he was really good with Joyce. So I don't know, I would say that we found so many things, so many intriguing threads, you know, certainly in rehearsal and once we started shooting, and we could see that this all the stuff I made them do and the stuff I made them read, and I made them trade roles one day, it drove them insane.
Oh, I love that.
It was, we just worked so well, and I could see how uh, the deeper levels of everything we were discussing were just flowing from the performances, from the sets, from the clothes. So it's never easy. Physically, it's very punishing to make a film as a director. You are on your feet 14 hours a day, and then all you can do is sleep. It's very intense, but what we had, bottom line, was a great creative collaboration on every level. Everyone was really plugged into it. I mean, I wasn't crazy about my DP. I had fired two before that. I like to fire DPs if they don't understand what it is I want to do, and they say things like, "Oh, don't worry, honey, I'm going to make you a beautiful movie." And I said, "I don't think you are." So I ended up with this guy. Yeah, I designed these very involved shots, these combination shots. We were always on the dolly, and I was always on the little seat on the edge of the dolly. And that was all through the movie. We were always moving. I knew we had to keep the film moving forward. The film had to move. So we were always moving. And, you know, the fact that it worked, I mean, I'm thrilled. And they made a new print. This would be maybe 6 or 7 or 8 years ago. They made a new print and they wanted to screen it. And something called the Film Family, something like that. It's Fairfax. It's on Fairfax Avenue. It's the old Fairfax Silent Movie Theater, if any of you have ever lived there or spent time there. And they bought it, this guy, and they show older movies, and then they have discussions, and they do it all the time. And they approached us about it, and nobody had a problem getting themselves to LA. And we were all there, and I was sitting between the two Billies. I had a Zapka on the right, I had a Jane on the left, and I'm sitting there, and they were the hardest ones. They were the last ones to say they were going to come and join us. They were working, and also they weren't sure. You know, it's been a while. Am I still that guy? I think I'm doing this other stuff. And they were sitting around me, and they kept leaning into me, independent, saying, "What a great shot. This looks so great. I forgot how good it was." And then they'd lean back, and I'd go, "So next time I call you to do something, you'll show up."
That's right.
Yeah. Anyway, that's when I really knew that we had something that had lived well, had held up very well for over 30 years. Yeah, it was released the spring of 85. We shot it in the summer. Oh no, maybe we shot it in the fall of 83 and it came out in 84. I don't remember, but it was the top grossing film in town for 4 straight weeks. Then I got knocked out by some action picture, but I knocked out an old friend's action picture. And I loved it. He was calling me up saying, "You knocked out my picture."
What was the picture? What movie?
Well, Andy, he directed The Fugitive. Andrew, I feel dumb. I have to check this.
Now I feel dumb. I got to do this too.
I know he did. The Fugitive. He did Holes. The movie from the book Holes. Anyway, Andy, who was my friend, I worked on his first feature as a director in Chicago when I was in film school there. He was making a movie called Stony Island, and he and John Landis and John Badham were the 3 working directors that signed me in. You needed 3 signatures to get into the Directors Guild when I got invited to join. I had worked on Blues Brothers. I knew John Badham because he came down to visit. He loved the film, and he was a judge on the Student Academy Awards, and so he gave me an award. and then said, come in, let's talk. He was doing a one character movie in a hospital room. Whose Life Is It Anyway? It was Richard Dreyfuss. This was Batum.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I loved war games, so I just worshipped his work. And this is such a professional. He always knows where to put the camera, and he always keeps things moving. And I appreciated that. And he offered to help, like go over the prom, because I had, I don't know, 4 cameras. We had the crane back. We had all this stuff going on. I pretty much planned it out, but I showed him my work. And he said, yeah, this is really good. And I knew he was there because he was friends with the producers, these older guys, you know. And I said, so you'll call them and tell them that I'm actually doing a good job on this thing? You want to see some dailies? I could use some support. So we went in, we looked at dailies, because this always happens. Also, at a certain point, Warren Beatty developed a crush on Joyce. So I get a call. I leave. This is Warren Beatty. I'm dating your girlfriend, Joyce Heiser. And I said, well, I know her. I just made a movie with her. He goes, I know. I want to see it. I know that they always give you a hard time when you're a first-time director. They're always beating you up and trying to get you to make the film worse. Why don't I come in and I'll take a look at it and we can talk? And I thought, okay. And I thought, so we set up a screening at Columbia. I showed up, I welcomed him. I said, I've got some stuff to do, but I'll be here at the end. And I wasn't sure what was going to happen because I couldn't figure out, like, okay, I have an opportunity to get something from this guy. What is it? And I thought the best thing I could ask for is they just bulk up the confidence of the studio executives, and because they just sold, while I was shooting, they sold the studio to
Coca-Cola.
Coca-Cola. So you might notice all the Coca-Cola cans.
Yeah.
What do you think? And I said, but I like the logo. I'll take the older, smaller, little green bottles that used to come out of a machine, and you'd open the top. I have a bunch in my refrigerator, actually. Anyway, those and the cans, because I thought I loved the red and white, and I was doing there's a lot of color work. There's a lot of palette work in the film. There's a lot of use of bright primary colors, which is where the Coke can fits in, but also these pastels. And she was always wearing pink and these other pastels, except when she becomes a guy. Anyway, everybody had their own color scheme. And so I just said to him, I have no idea what to ask you for. I mean, how did you feel about the film? Did it lag for you? And he said, well, I'm not exactly the target audience, but it was great. I thought the cast was great. I thought your shot design was great. It was really easy to watch. It was funny. And then he said, and it was really original. I mean, I'd never seen, even if it was a 14-year-old kid, I'd never seen a man scratch his balls on screen. And I said, there you go. That's my hook. That is my hook. That, and I have always thought it was also hooky when they go on this date. She goes on a date with Sandy. This is Terry as a guy. And, we had 3 versions of Terry. So in the script, which for the ADs and everybody, it's for wardrobe and hair and makeup to know whether she was working Terry full girl, Terry girl with the short boy haircut, but still girl. And then Terry is full boy. So anyway, I had said to him, look, just the things you just said to me, say that to them, leave out the part about you not being the target audience, and just say that it worked for you, that it just moved, that it was funny, that, you thought the cast was fresh and young and exciting. He goes, oh, well, that Joyce, she's really exciting. And I thought, okay, I'm not participating in that conversation. Thank you for coming. Hello.
Oh my gosh.
So
good old Master Beatty. I had to. I was just sitting right there. I'm sorry.
Nervous wreck. meeting him and talking
Wow.
to him. I
Can you
just,
imagine?
you know,
So yes, and again, I just looked this up, but again, our buddies in the chat, Dustin Nino, who works at Retrofiend Radio, they make some of the most incredible canon and martial arts documentaries you could ever imagine, all on YouTube. They say, as do I, that the film you knocked out was Code of Silence with Chuck Norris. So that is quite the powerful
it.
80s legend right there. If you can knock out Chuck Norris in the 80s, you got the goods. And you also beat Travolta and Jamie Lee Curtis with their film Perfect, which was a whole nother story. I know the studio was like pushing that
They
film.
thought that was going to be the big hit of the century. I mean, it landed like an 80-pound weight in the gym with nobody spotting you. It was not good. And then suddenly, Guy and all the president and all the executives, many of whom got fired while the Coca-Cola switch was being made. It was bizarre. I'd walk down this hallway that was lined with people that had been working on the release of the film. It's just empty offices. I thought, oh shit. That was the other thing I asked Warren. They sold the studio. It's bonkers. I'm releasing in May, which was just a couple of months after that. And the publicity department is gone. There's one guy in the music department. I mean, I'm going to finish it on time, but it's a little weird. And he said, oh, I can talk about that with them. I could let Guy know. Guy, right? No, what was his name? Guy something. Anyway, I can convince him, not to do the stupid thing. So it just worked out, but it's pretty freaky to do a studio picture for your first film. You know, I had a very independent-minded approach to it. They didn't want to call it I Was a Teenage Boy, and I had suggested one of the guys, and they added just, because they had to. And I said, well, that makes it a little diminutive, then it's sort of, I said, the road to hell is paved with adverbs, which is Stephen King quote. And they just kind of looked at me and I thought, okay, wrong. And I said, okay, call it just one of the guys, but
oh man, well,
but that poster is everything.
Yes. Oh,
that
poster,
one sheet is
it is incredible. Yeah.
Great job. And you know what's great about that poster? When people say to me, oh, I know your film. It's about the girl that in high school who joins the football team. This way, but not the movie.
Oh my gosh.
Actually, Chris, I want to jump in real quick because I want talking about the poster actually brings me to my sequel idea, which I'm going to do real quick.
Yes,
but
please.
But I was thinking, like, I want more Buddy. So I'm thinking like Buddy is kind of the guy that grows up to be like a football coach. Like that's who he grows up to be in my mind,
Okay.
So he's coaching football at like a private school. And it's like they cut their teeth getting all these kids that are, that they used to have all these championships, but they're in a slump because Buddy doesn't work hard. And so now he's the new coach and they're just doing a bad job. So Terry has a daughter who really wants to play football, but they won't let her at her public school.
Mm-hmm.
And so her uncle Buddy is like, you can come play with me, but here's the catch. You got to dress up like a boy.
Oh, I love it.
And Terry's like, no, like, we're not going down this road. And he's like, what do you mean we're not going down this road? Like, you did this. I learned this from you, So now she's playing football at the private school. She's still attending the public school because it's after school. So there's no conflict, But she's got a crush on a guy at her public school, and Buddy is determined to intervene and help get her laid at the public school. And so now we've got this whole thing. We've got this whole thing going on where like he's like this 47-year-old guy who's trying to get his like 15-year-old niece laid, and like it's just weird. And he's like, let's just go with it.
Oh my God. I'm all for it. That's amazing.
So that's what I'm sort of playing with, and I don't exactly know how to land this plane, but I feel like the guy that Buddy is trying to get her laid with is gay. And then he's like, what? Like he can't handle it. Like he's like totally like thrown by this whole thing.
Oh, that's
and
interesting.
So
yeah.
That's the framework, you know. As Lisa said, you have to flesh it out from there, but that's sort of the framework that
I
I'm
love that.
trying to
And then of course there could be a nice guy on her public school team, you know.
Yep.
That
and
is
it's
like
the whole
direct,
thing,
you know.
like Lisa was saying before about, you know, the whole thing about, you know, trans kids playing sports. Like here, it's, you know, it's like a girl wants to play football and like they won't let her play, but she's good. And like that's what the team needs. You know, you get to have like your Rudy moment or your Little Giants moment, if you will. You know, like, this team gets, you know, is victorious for the first time, and Buddy gets his championship.
I love it.
As long as at the very end we get a Teen Wolf moment where the daughter comes out and it's like, you know what? I am a girl. Bam. And you know, I don't think I don't think you could flash the crowd at a football game, but you know, like some moment where
maybe Terry does it. Maybe Terry's like, not a big deal. And you know, she has
interesting subplot you could have too. Again, if you because we have so much fun and we would love to see Joyce, you know, with short hair again, being Terry, like that version of Terry, that voice and all that stuff. It would be really funny if, you know, she's doing that and it's like all these divorced moms on the team are like in love with Terry, you know, so it's like there's something about Terry, you know what I mean? Like all the moms are chasing after her. That would be a hilarious subplot.
That goes in the
like,
script.
Sherilyn could be one of those moms.
Because you really don't kind of see she sees the realities at the end, right? Like if you watch the movie, it could totally be a 40 years or 30 years later. I remember that one guy that got away.
Yeah.
I remember that's him. That's him.
Yeah. Oh, you're still saying bitching, you know? Sandy. Sandy's
so
cousin
much opportunity to take this into today and you know, kind of compare it to the 80s, which were very different. It was a very different time, but it was certainly preparing us for what the craziness of today. I think it's interesting between the two times, and I like this idea. We had an original ending where the girls were playing soccer, and Rick comes to bust her. I mean, to see her again after the prom, and she walked away, but to also say, well, here you are, and you're looking good, babe. I don't remember exactly how it went, but I think he tackled her. That's what it did. Yes, and it was very disorienting. We did a great shoot on it, but we also had a visitor to the set that day, and we had tickets to a show that night, and that was Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band. So Bruce Springsteen and Clarence Clemens came to the set. They're old friends with Joyce. Joyce lived with Bruce for a long time.
Poor Clayton had to tackle Bruce Springsteen's girlfriend in front of Bruce Springsteen and Clarence Clemens.
Wow.
Yeah, they stayed friends, and you know, and she's friends with the whole band, and she's always been in that group of people. And he was coming to town, and she said, you know, I'd like to just bring the whole cast and the director and friends, and why don't you come to the set? And then we were all really nervous when he was at the set. But he's a sweetheart. And then we went to the show that night, and we went backstage and hung out with them, and it was really fun. And I got him to promise me he would see the film when it's released. So there you go. I have no idea if he kept the promise, but it was exciting, but was it distracting? And
you know, I'm sorry if I may interject. Real quick question on that original ending. Gold's Code in the chat wants to ask, was Buddy in that ending as well?
I remember him being there, and I remember him doing something odd and funny. Like I wanted him to dress in the girls' soccer uniform to try to get next to the girls, maybe sneak in the locker room. they said, no, that's dragging it out too long. Let's just get him out there. And I wasn't sure it was going to work. We cut it in. I liked it, but from the studio and from like Andy Fogelson, they said, well, so shouldn't it end with her working at the paper? That and assume that she hadn't seen Rick, that, you know, he turned around and walked away from her that night. And is he going to come back? So I bought into that. And Jeff came in and he and I sketched out a scene that took place there. And I didn't know what to do with Buddy. And he wrote this thing where he jumps on the back of a motorcycle that a blonde in leather pants is driving, and
one of the great endings ever.
We write it about a half a dozen times, and we shot it a couple of different ways, and I gave the producers the one they liked, because in exchange for some other stuff that I knew the film needed, that, you know, it's always a negotiation. But we shot that like a month or so, 2 months maybe, after we wrapped the film. And I was in the editing room that whole time rushing, because, you know, we wrapped before Christmas and then it was released the first weekend in May. That's unbelievably fast. We had working. Wow. I was just going from room to room, cutting this stuff. So, you know, we did a high speed release, and it did very well. That's the other thing, is that it made it, at the end of the day, when all the accounting was in, not all the ancillary sales, like all the stuff you sell later to NBC Universal, there were about 10 of those sales. But even before that, the foreign sales, which did well, and the American box office, and I would guess that would also be the DVD.
And that Blu-ray I know sold well.
They sold out the first day because I don't have one. I need it.
Oh, wow.
They were nice to us, but
I'll let you borrow mine when we get together in New York City for dinner with Caseem and Melanie. Melanie's gonna have to fly all the way out to California for that, though.
Next time I'm in California.
Yes.
Although I will say this, I don't care what happens at the end of the movie, as long as we find out, one, who the mother is and what the heck did she do? What is that mother doing, Lisa? I got to know.
It was the way it worked. When your parents were gone, they were gone. And when you're a teenager, they barely exist anyways. So
all in, and he says, oh, this was one thing that some of the trans women and trans men who'd called me, we did this kind of live chat where, and I hadn't done that. We got it all set up. I did it with Erin Carmone, and she was working it was at Jezebel, when Jezebel still existed. And I thought, okay, well, I'll just be here and we'll talk. And she said, a lot of people are gonna type in and ask you questions and approach you. There'll be a lot of people. I said, yeah, sure, why not? And I'd never done it. And I sat down on my couch and I didn't stand up for about 3.5 hours. You know, we weren't doing something like this where there was a prescribed amount of time. And we just went on and on, because you know, she would then, you can click on everything and listen to it. It's all just there. It was a great idea, but I was really shocked by how many trans women and trans men would say, when I saw that movie, I saw my route to being who I really was. I saw that I could be fluid. I could be both a man and a woman, and I could choose which one felt right. And I felt like the movie made it so safe to perform those experiments. And I said, well, honestly, I never thought of it that way, but I find it incredibly gratifying that a film about a young woman with a great sense of humor and a lot of smarts and beauty and style and poise faces a problem she can't solve, and in the search for her identity tries a lot of things, which is, I think that is what growing up kind of is. And I have a lot of students that haven't chosen who they are yet. They are open to possibilities. It's just a fascinating way that I was living in such a binary world when we were writing, producing, finishing, and releasing the film. And then to see how, I guess it was about 15 years later that we did this live chat. And it's amazing. 15, 20 years later, people still look back on this as being the thing that put them on the road to getting to their identity. So I'll tell you, it's filled with surprises, this stuff. You never know what's going to happen. You never know who's going to fall in love with the film. You never know. You know, we're stuck at a studio that doesn't see the value of it. There may be, probably, like in all likelihood, we'll never make a sequel. Unless I did something that just became a hit, or somebody else in the cast did something that became a hit. And we're all kind of talking about retiring in the next 10 years, you know.
Before you do, there must be just one more of the guys. Please, just one more. That's all we need.
Just one more.
Please, just one more. And then when that's a mega hit, we'll make it after that. But we are unfortunately a little bit past our hour time here. So the film is so near and dear to our hearts.
No, to heck with it. No, Lisa, we're just gonna talk, you and Caseem. Yeah. We don't care. Like, let's just
no, we can keep talking. Do this. The show is near its end though. But I do also, of course, want to give Caseem and Lisa a chance to plug anything they have upcoming in the future, or even just where people can follow you on social media. Anything you want to tell the people watching at home.
The people. Yeah, I mean,
the people.
The social media goes. I don't mind at all hearing from people. I mean, especially people like Melanie and Caseem. Is that Caseem? I'm always happy to meet people who love the process and have ideas. And just my idea of fun is binging on movies. And, you know, not everybody lives in that space. Not everybody is a total film geek. I know I can personally empty out a dinner party in about 5 minutes if someone asks the right question about a certain film that I feel passionate about. I'm sure you've all experienced this. You know, maybe one person stays, everybody else is out in the back smoking a joint. And I'm here, you know, talking about that great scene and that great moment in this movie. So, yeah, I don't do it all the time. I learned my lessons. Or now I have a warning I give, which is I can go deep on this. I can get really crazed. I can talk about this in detail in a very philosophical way. I think my act is great on this movie, but maybe you want to go outside and not hear this. Maybe you want me and this one person to go outside so you don't have to listen. So I'm aware that this is a rarity. This is like a safe space for those of us who can empty out a dinner party pretty quickly.
This is change the name to the Empty Plate Club here.
The Empty Plate Club. I love that.
Empty Plate Club. But again, your stories are amazing, and you're so absolutely welcome back on the show to get deep with us nerds anytime you want. We'd love to have you. So yes. Thank you so much again. And Caseem, what is coming up with you, my man? I know Footnotes is out.
Yes, Footnotes is out, and I am, you mentioned the E.T. Ultimate Visual History, which is out in June. Chris knew about this project, it seems like years ago. I mean, it was years ago, right? It was like,
it was years ago.
I was telling you about this. But it's actually out, and I will tell you, like, if I can say so myself, it's beautiful. Like, it's go pre-order it. Don't do it for me, do it for you. Like, it's stuff that we have pulled out of the archives, Yeah, it's seriously the stuff that we pulled out of the archives at Amblin and Universal. It's mind-blowing stuff that as like a fan, like I am so honored that my name gets to be on the cover of this. And so yeah, check it out. It's E.T. the Ultimate, E.T. the Extraterrestrial, the Ultimate Visual History, out in June, and it's a big ass coffee table book filled with lots of words and things that I promise you have never heard before, and a really, really, really nice ending to the book by Steven Spielberg himself, which I won't spoil, but I got a great ending of the book from him that it's worth the price of admission alone. So,
oh my God, I am so excited about that and so stoked for you and for all the ET fans out there. Ian, is there anything coming up in your works of the world? I know you have a trailer dropped for your upcoming film. You want to let the people at home know about that?
Yes. So you can find on YouTube, Dairy Public Radio, the short, for great podcasters, Dairy Public Radio. The teaser trailer's out. Next week, the actual short film will premiere. Again, just kind of to promote the show and promoting that kind of Stephen King world. So that'll be premiering. And if you do enjoy funny, witty articles, which I'm probably not funny, but I did just release a great article on the classic, robbed of an Oscar, Monster A Go-Go, from 1961 or 62, 64, whenever the movie got finished. So that is on Fandom Spotlite. You can check that out and look forward to reading weekly articles. If you like terrible movies, and I do, you can enjoy those reviews. So
there's something about the really terrible ones.
Oh, they're the best.
The ones that are spectacularly bad. That, you know, the worst kiss is to just be like mediocrely average movie. You know, if you're gonna be good, be great, and if you're gonna be bad, be terrible.
That's
anyway,
right.
do you want to remind everyone at home, you Fandom fans might want to tune into Tuesday's Fear the Walking Dead reactor panel featuring our very own governor, Captain Kyle. And of course, we want you to tune in next Wednesday at 9 p.m. when we dip over to Thailand for some Tong Po, some Nak Su Cow, a little bit of Muay Thai, a whole lot of muscles from Brussels, and a healthy helping of the Code Man himself. That's right. Cue up the Stan Bush because it's time to unlock the power of the Kickboxer franchise. As always, if there's a particular movie or TV franchise that you want us to cover on a future episode, let us know in the comment section on YouTube. And since you're already doing that, you might as well go ahead and like, subscribe, and follow Fandom Spotlite, Rick Barth and the Line, the Hollow 9 Network, and Pop Culture Punk. Till then, back up those Betamax, rewind those Laserdiscs, and we'll see you at the movies.